If you've been following along, you know that Jon has been taking us down some deep dives into the therapist's mind when working with survivors with DID and extreme trauma, as well as what a survivor should expect when working with a therapist. These episodes we've been doing act as sort of a cheat sheet for us to learn the nuances of what getting help should look like if you're a survivor of SRA, human trafficking, and/or mind control. And these episodes are also extremely insightful for helpers of survivors to better understand how to support them. Relearning how our bodies work and react to trauma is paramount to healing as a society and individually, and Jon is just the right person to break down these boundaries so we can all see more clearly. During our weekly series, we have been covering everything from internal parts and systems, boundaries and triggers, and on the last couple episodes, we have been going deep into the mind of predators, perpetrators, and pedophiles, as well as contending with things like psychopathy and fetish porn. Learning all of this should have been mandatory for everybody, whether you're a survivor or not, and we've gotten so much great feedback about how this series has been positively impacting all of you. Today, Jon will continue our deep dive into the mind of a sexual deviant, along with the helpful charts and graphics he provides for us to learn from that he shares on the screen. So please, everyone, grab a pen and paper and give Jon your full attention as he helps shine a light on the darkness that has been hiding in plain sight all along. Jon, thank you so much for being here with me today.
And it's good to be back with you.
It's awesome to have you back. I know I say this every time, but I am just amazed at the feedback that I get from viewers and the really awesome comments that I get from everybody from therapists to survivors. And I'm noticing recently, I was telling you before we started recording, I'm noticing people writing things about their past, whether it's a relationship or a friendship, a family member, toxicity in somebody's life that they might have been shouldering as their responsibility. I'm seeing people, how you say, boulders and knapsacks. I'm seeing people take their knapsacks off because of this, the series that we're doing right now on predators and perpetrators. People are having those aha moments and they're like, oh, that wasn't my fault, what my ex did or what this person did. I'm going to give that knapsack back, and I think that's so neat that you're able to give that gift through this series. So I'm really, really excited to dive deeper into it. And thank you guys so much too for your comments. It's really awesome to see those. You guys might not think that it's, that big of a deal to leave a comment, but not only does it help with algorithms, it really helps us just see what parts of the interviews and episodes that you guys are loving, what's helping you guys, and we really, really appreciate it. It's fun getting to, interact with you guys in that way. And with that being said, one of the other things that we ask you guys to do in the comments is to write your questions that you have for Jon. We've been trying to start every episode with 1 or 2 questions from you, and we have some really awesome submissions. So Jon, if it's okay with you, I wanted to start with a question that I actually got emailed to me today that I thought was a really great question to ask. Okay, cool. So this question is it's sort of a little paragraph. So if you need me to repeat any of it, let me know. But the question that this person has for you is it necessary to go back and map out all of the parts to finish my healing? As I have moved through my healing/memory, I have intuitively and consciously moved my parts. And then in parentheses, they said, I never asked their name, but I know them. And then continuing, into a safe home in my heart. I haven't lost time or blacked out for over 20 years, and generally I can identify parts when I get triggered and work on them, but more memories are coming up, hopefully the final ones. Besides journaling, would he have any other recommendations for someone like me, or does it just take time? So the first question was, is it necessary to go back and map out all the parts to finish my healing? And then essentially, besides journaling, are there any other recommendations for somebody like me?
There we go. Good question. Multiple parts. Pardon the pun, right, to the question. I would say, first of all, kind of whatever works. Right, that who's to say that what healing will look like for someone will possibly be different for someone else. So I tend to be very pragmatic, which is whatever works. So if somebody feels that they're pretty much done, then they're done. oftentimes, if somebody's submitting a question, then they're not quite sure if they're finished. I think in either part one or part two, way back in the beginning of this very series, I tackled the issue, how do you know? Or what's the goal and how do you know if you're there and what? Like and even if somebody's in regular counseling, if someone were to ask, well, what's this all about? What do you try to achieve? I think the goal is for each of us. Now, this is my own bias, but this is my own perspective as a therapist. What I want for my clients, first of all, is whatever they want for themselves within reason, but all things being equal, probably what most people want in their lives is peace and rest if they've reached adulthood. You talk to a teenager and they don't want a peace and rest, they want excitement. Okay, sorry. But we want freedom. What does that look like? Free to choose, free to be able to have my voice, free to be able to have boundaries. What are boundaries? Essentially, your preference. Be able to be empowered enough to have hopes and dreams.
Great answer. And whoever asked that question, going back to dissociation, if you go back in our episode archive, we talk a ton about that in the first couple episodes before we actually get into the charts explaining the parts and systems that are a result of dissociation. So go back and listen to that too if you have questions on that. And if we didn't clarify it, or if you have an additional question, go ahead and drop it in the comments. And that goes for any of you. If any of you guys are listening and have questions about this type of thing, we have a specialist, an authority on this here with us. And I encourage you guys to take advantage of asking your questions because, unless you're actually getting treatment or working with somebody who can help, a lot of these questions I think go unanswered for a lot of us, so no question is, stupid or not important. Just drop it and we'll try to get to it as soon as possible. We love hearing from you guys. So thank you so much for whoever submitted that. And Jon, I know that for the remainder of the show, we're going to do another layer / deep dive into the topic that we've been talking about the last couple of weeks, which essentially is, I guess, reverse engineering, psychopathy, sexual deviance, and really trying to get to the root of understanding how somebody can become that and sort of what that looks like internally in the same way that we are doing for survivors to understand their own psychology parts and systems. So I'm going to turn it over to you. I know you have a really awesome graphic that you've been digging in, and I think you added more to it.
We're adding a little bit more each week, although we haven't gotten to the parts that I'm adding to. So at least it'll entice people to keep coming back and listening because it's long overdue. No, meaning this has been giving me an opportunity to sit down and really think systematically through. I mean, I have in the past, but there's been more that has been needed to be put down. So on paper. So this is really, everybody's kind of seeing it hot off the press in evolution, so to speak, my thinking about it. And we will go into probably in a week or two. We won't do too much, but just enough, I think, to give people a sense of what they were or were not responsible for. And part of that, and the rationale, Emma, as you mentioned, is the more sophisticated the perpetrator, the more they will blend or blur two tacks. That's a boating term, two directions, a pincer move to really confuse somebody. One is the straight up trauma, they're terrorizing the kid, but then they're going to play upon a kid's emotions. And that's where we get trauma bonded, the term. That's where we get, how about the parts that feel loyal? So they're gonna pull a fast one. So they're going to do everything from appealing to the supposed relationship or calling the kid special or saying that they've been chosen because of their bloodline. I mean, the cultists love to do all sorts of things. I'm learning more, even as we speak. It's been an interesting thing. I'm learning more about Freemasonry and some of this stuff. I knew a fair bit, but boy, oh boy, over the past few weeks, I've learned more. But what I'll say is I don't care, regardless of bloodline, regardless of family, regardless of last name, kind of redundant, or whatever they told you why they were choosing you or why you had to be there. Right? They're going to be traumatizing you, so you didn't have a choice, meaning you did not have a choice. But also, what did they do? Then they threw in this weird kind of, man, you're so good, you're special, you withstood that test so well, you're so smart. Well, these are two very different messages. Right? One is we're destroying you on the one hand. The other one, on the other hand, you've been chosen because you're special. And that sets up that contradiction. And a lot of the parts on the inside that will remain loyal, guess what part of that message they gravitate to? They block out the other. As a matter of fact, they split. Right? So we're the good ones on the inside. You guys, you're bad, so we'll punish you on their behalf. You need to get in line, but we're dutiful. So it's that mixed message. It's I hate you, don't leave me. I hate you. That's borderline personality. But it's that message. It's the catch-22 or double bind. So what we're doing is we're helping to dismantle any of those good messages they gave. So you can really see who it was that was giving you those messages, that it was a grand lie. And therefore, when they said you were doing a good job, they were blowing smoke, meaning it wasn't about doing a good job or not doing a good job. They were harming you. They were never going to do anything other than they did. So the question is, how does somebody get to that point where they can perpetrate such evil? And then what it means is no matter who they had snatched or had taken or had managed to get their hands on, they were going to do the same thing to them. It's just, this is how evil they are. So how does somebody become this evil? So that's really so they can separate knapsacks. I mean, the survivor is getting the knapsacks off, placing responsibility back where it belongs. And then the truth sets you free. So on that note, that's why we're doing this. And Emma, I'll do a little side note. It was interesting. I was once again listening to the prayer that you pray and about the helmet of salvation and taking up the sword of the Spirit. By the way, the sword of the Spirit in the Greek, there were two kinds of Roman swords, a rhomphyra and a machaira. Little trivia here. You can tell once upon a time I was heading into the ministry and learned Koine Greek. Okay. Rhomphyra was the big broadsword. When it says taking up the sword of the Spirit, it's machaira. It's a dagger. It's actually a scalpel. Now, without triggering anybody, the reason why Paul used that term, the reason why the Holy Spirit had Paul use that term is we want to be able to be exact when it comes to the truth, because the truth sets us free. So if I take a concept, or if somebody has taken a concept with me and it's sort of either out of context, like for instance, once I become a Christian, the old has been the old has been made new. And so if I'm still having problems, it must be me. Because the verse says everything will be made new. But that's not the application of that verse. So when it comes to this, it's actually dealing with, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, though I walk through very difficult things. So being precise. But one of the things that also came to mind is thinking about how the truth can set someone free. And I saw a picture and then I found one, and this is unrelated, but I really want to give people encouragement. So you haven't seen what I'm going to show people. Oh, you may have to host disabled. I think you may have to, because I'll tell you what it probably feels like to many of you right now. This picture is probably how you feel, that Satan's winning. That snake has, look where the coils are. And the question is, who's going to win? But I want to tell you the truth. If left to ourselves, we're no match for Satan. Now, Satan does not have godlike characteristics, but I'll tell you what is true. So if actual programming, and I had somebody, a really knowledgeable therapist, in a good way. She challenged me. She said, I know you don't like the term programming, but it kind of like they programmed. And so I appreciated that feedback. But I still want people to understand that programming is for like computers. And if somebody goes in that's more knowledgeable than you, you're done. How do you unprogram that? Automatic triggering, right? Associating things. So I want people to understand that at the end of the day, see that snake? Okay, if left to ourselves, yep, in a way, we're no match. But guess who? Guess who we're related to? Guess what he does with snakes? The Lord did what to Satan? So this is what God does to Satan. It's not he can take control of Satan, and therefore Satan isn't. I mean, he took that snake that was wrapping around that lamb, and guess what he did? He's unwrapping it around your throat. All the things that were told to you that you feel like you can't get out of it. Guess what our God has done to that snake? Who's in charge of that snake? Okay, so that's really important because he who the Son sets free is really free indeed. So I just wanted to share that as a point. Hopefully that's encouraging. Now, that had nothing to do with what we're going to talk about, but everything to do with hopefully that is encouraging. Now, let me see if, how do I get, oh, there we go. What I may have to do now, I'm going to share. Here we go. Emma, any thoughts about that? That was sort of a random thought, but did the chart come up, by the way? Or is it back to the picture?
Yep, the chart's up. It seems to be a little bit shifted that way.
How about that?
It's still, there we go. Okay. It's loading a little bit slow on my end. So yep, I can see it now. It looks great.
Any thoughts about the snake and then the big hand that comes and takes the snake off?
I love that. I think that's a really empowering analogy because I think we can feel bogged down by that way, especially when, there's attacks in the spiritual realm or when we're just feeling really spiritually heavy or toxic, like there's all this darkness. We can feel like we're powerless, but whenever you realize that there's something above that and that's not the end all be all, that really has no power over us in comparison to God, who does, our all-knowing God, our protector, and that he really is, the sword of the spirit. And he really does put the helmet of salvation over us and protects us and gives us that shield of faith. Whenever we remember all these things, it automatically puts a shield up and a boundary, and that darkness has no match for it. But in those moments, it can be really hard to realize that or to remind us of that. So I love that graphic, and for people to, when they're feeling like they're constricted by a snake and that there's those fangs right in front of them, that they can picture, God coming in and, releasing that, and that it really has no power over them. So thank you for sharing that, because that's like a lot of people feel hopeless and depressed and bogged down, and it's a great reminder. You always come and give us hope, Jon.
Well, in Isaiah 52 and 53 and other places in Isaiah, it talks about the strong arm of the Lord, the right arm of the Lord. So just picture that. Right now, ask the Lord to just grab Satan by the throat, unwind him from you, right, and then smash his head, because the prophecy in Genesis 3:16 that Satan would bruise his heel, but what would Jesus do with that same foot? Crush his head. So it's really important to know. Okay, hopefully that's good news to folks. Okay, we're getting back into our chart. The chart, again, the goal is to help people understand how someone gets to a point where they can harm a kid, and not just harm a kid in a typical fashion, but really in a sadistic fashion, because the level that we're talking about is sadistic. If you've been with us for any length of time, you will see this chart, you'll recognize it. But again, I've added a few things. I'm not just adding for adding's sake, but it's becoming ever more, I want it to be precise so people understand what they're dealing with in terms of who was it that harmed you? What was motivating them? What was the truth about them? We're going to zoom in on this chart as we have done. I wanted you to see the kind of the 30,000 view look, the macro. Then we're going to look at the micro. But the one thing I want you to see is these white lines going down. These actually match. If you go to the, where is it? The silver bar right in there. Degrees of deviant arousal. Okay. In a way, this is one of the most important dimensions, and we will actually cover this tonight. But I want you to see there are little separations between these gradations, these categories. And so what I want the audience to see, what I want you to see is as goes deviance, so goes everything else. Meaning if someone moves from one level of deviance, where are we? Right there. As you move from category 1, I'll just call it category 1 to category 2 to category 3, then everything else lines up. Everything else then makes sense because everything about the person is changing. So the best way to view this chart is in terms of categories. And since they're going downhill, since they're getting worse, we're going from -1, -2, -3. As a matter of fact, let me, if I can, now I'm on Zoom. Now let me see if I can bring up, I don't want to lose my audience. Okay, I'm going to be talking to you all, but I also want to bring up another chart. But I'm used to actually controlling, for whatever reason, it's a little too complicated right now. You would think it would be easy to switch between screens, but we're going to stick with this. Because what I was going to show you is the gradations downward. You may have seen kind of that color, the scale, as it were, or from blue to red in the different terms of the book of Proverbs and Psalms. So if someone goes from blue to red, they get off the path of life and they're moving downward. Okay, so this is, once the person is off the path of life, now ego is growing, they're moving downward. So they're going to change. Category by category, they're morphing, and that's the important thing to see. We're going to increase it now. Watch your eyes just a bit. We're going to zoom in right about there. And for those of you that haven't been with us, I recommend go back and watch part 1 and part 2. So we'll pick up where we left off. I don't believe I finished with conscience, but we'll kind of review that again. I don't think I totally finished with it. We spent a fair bit of time last time, part 2, looking at the different kinds of crimes. Okay, so I want to go back and focus on conscience, and then we'll look at these other categories or facets. Maybe that's the best way to put it. This dotted line right there is the demarcation point between legal and illegal. So the important thing, the important takeaway, and why I drew that down from top to bottom is to show you there's a lot of stuff, a lot of things that somebody can do that are legal but not ethical and not moral. Once somebody crosses a legal line, whether or not they get busted, but that means they really have progressed. It takes a lot of work, in a way, to get to a point where you are crossing legal lines, especially in the U.S., right? We've become so deviant now that it takes a lot of work to get arrested. And as a matter of fact, let me jump to pornography just for a second. We looked at some of this, but think about people that are into BDSM, kink, even have some therapists that are pushing the idea of kink. The APA, the American Psychological Association, they are having in their most recent trainings for one of their divisions, it's all on kink, BDSM. Actually, they have one on bestiality. They're really trying to rebrand this stuff. Well, the dirty little secret is behind the scenes and under the surface, what are they likely into? The ones that are leading those workshops for psychologists, for therapists. So that's what's so diabolical about this. That almost without exception, really you're not going to find an exception, that if somebody tells you they're a zoophile, then probably what else are they accessing? Now, as far as men, so what are men accessing? They're not going to tell you, right? Oh, there's AGP. So they'll tell you they're an AGP. They'll tell you they're a zoophile. If they're a furry, guess what they're accessing, right? That kind of stuff. They're never going to tell you they're into child porn because they've gone through barely legal, right? They'll say they have fetishes, but a fetish is just deviance, by the way. It's just perversion. Okay, so by the time somebody is doing barely legal, if they ever let on to it, they've already gone through, gonzo is that forced degradation. My contention is when somebody's looking at a girl screaming to be let go and let loose from 3 or 4 guys that are carrying her onto a couch where it appears she's going to be gang raped, it's actually real. So this really is, you're watching rape in that one. And then by the time somebody overtly is into kink and BDSM, sissy porn, that's how young teen boys or even junior high and middle school, by the time they're dressing as girls, guess what they've already accessed? And people have been moving them towards accessing this kind of stuff. And so they are, perps are showing these boys sissy porn. Why? Because they're going to rape them. That's the only reason why you want to get a boy dressing as a girl. Okay, so on that happy note, but none of this, right, this is very hard stuff, but I really want people to understand by the time somebody gets to the far right, and this is where we find SRA and MKUltra, they're over on the far right. Whether or not they've been busted, they're over on the far right, and they got that way progressively. So whatever they have said to you that seems nice in the midst of all the abuse, they may say something like, you're special, you were chosen, you're so bright. They don't mean it whatsoever. They're trying to cause you confusion, okay? Because a mild, and it's not mild, but think about somebody way over on the far left, okay? Somebody that's unethical will tell someone that they're special. Okay, and that's still, right, they're not, because they're working that person, they're grooming them. But if you just give me an unethical person, they would never do this stuff. But these kind of people know how these different categories think and operate. Why? Because they once were there. So in a way, those on the far right have an advantage because they know how everybody else thinks because they once did. Now, there's a debate. We will go into that in probably 2 episodes from now. As far as is psychopathy nature, nurture, genetics? Is it neuroanatomy, neurochemistry? I'll give you the easy answer, which is no, it is conscience. But we'll kind of go into that and what the science is showing. But I'll tell you, those of us that have worked with psychopaths, I can tell you what it just comes down to conscience, okay? So we're going to go back up to the issue of conscience, right? So that, again, you can see as goes conscience, and then we could draw those categories more and more. So we could put more categories in here. We could probably put a total of 10. So going back down to the gray bar here, degrees of deviant arousal. That's really the key. Deviance is the issue. And again, if you were with us, you will know, you'd be able to answer. If this was a class, you'd be able to say, what is the difference? Once you get into deviant arousal, what is that? And you would know that it's very different than lust. It's really the polar opposite in a way, right? This person, lust has to do with attraction. Deviance has to do with having a negative effect, and that's the beginning of psychopathy. That's somebody that is deviant, and it doesn't take, we're into what? -1, -2, -3, -4. Okay, because everything else is going to be sort of normal and on the straight and narrow. Okay, so once somebody is given over to lust or giving themselves over to lust, then everything else is going to follow, but they're getting into lust because they are violating their conscience. Okay, so the key to understand sexual predation, to understand sex offending, to understand sexual psychopathy, which is psychopathy layered with sex and sexuality, so sexual psychopath, is to understand that when somebody becomes deviant, for a guy, they can only get an erection to the extent that they know they're causing some sort of duress. That's very different than over here. Okay? And that makes all the difference in the world. So the more deviant somebody becomes, the less human they become, the more of a predator they become. And this is a progression of deviance. So the issue is always deviance. If you want to fast track or supercharge, if you want to put jet fuel in the process, you add pornography. That's why we're seeing more and more sex offenders. That's why I'm up to 5 sex offender treatment groups. I'm one of the largest providers in the state of South Carolina for sex offender treatment. And we're seeing younger and younger kids in junior high. They're perpetrating on their classmates. Where did that come from? Because kids now have access to pornography. So pornography supercharges this gold bar here, this dimension of deviance, sexual objectification. And so perpetration will follow. Okay, so the key is deviance, and to supercharge deviance, just add pornography. Okay, we're going to go back up, and we'll go methodically, still kind of do a review, but there's one new thing I want to show everybody. Okay, so going back to conscience, you kind of see the charts. As a matter of fact, maybe I'll do this, because maybe this will help. So if we were alive, I would ask if anybody had any questions. We sort of are alive. Okay, so while I'm adding this, you see where I'm going to look at the deviance bar again. What I'm going to do is, no, is that the, yes, deviant arousal right there. Nope, that's not the one I want. Is that? Yes, okay, degrees of deviant arousal. Okay, now a little bit different, by the way. Let me define the difference between the gold bar here and the silver bar. Okay, this is the extent to which somebody will objectify somebody. So here is, in a way, how they're getting off. This is how they're changing and what they're going to want to do to somebody, what's going to cause them to get aroused. So my contention is this. These are the categories. Okay. I'm going to bring in another one. So we will hopefully then make this explainable, or I'm sorry, visually where it makes sense. Okay, so everybody bear with me. If you've been with us for any length of time, you'll know this is live. Okay, you see how these are coming together as far as these categories. Okay, so the focus will be right here in the gray. Degrees of deviant arousal, motivation, and degrees of intentional harm. Okay, so that's a primary focus. When I do my assessments, my sex offender assessments, that's really where I'm going for the parole agent. When I was working in the institution, the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections, for the institutional parole agents, and then for the parole board, easy for me to say, right? I would want them to understand what they were motivated, what the perps, what the predators are motivated by. Okay, are they motivated out of egocentricity, so egocentric, or just impulsive? Or was there something else, right? An impulsive person, he's motivated by lust, and that's what's driving him. But look at over here. Very, very different. But as we've seen before, if you've been with us, somebody on the far right of this continuum, the smarter they are, the more normal they will become, the more normal looking, they will become. So they know how to fake it, and they know how to act like somebody over in the far left. So those of you that were the victims of SRA or MKUltra, what I want you to understand is this. Everybody that harmed you was on the far right, but they could act like somebody on the far left, or even nice. So they can act innocent. That's why they might even say, oh, you're so sexy, you're so pretty. But meanwhile, what are they intending to do? Ritualistic abuse. They're intending to do all sorts of horrible things, right? So again, the focus and the purpose of this really is to help someone understand the further from left to right you go, the more this person is changing into somebody other than a normal human being. They're changing into a predator. So these are the categories, and it's moving downward. Okay, we're going to go back to the most important issue of conscience. Conscience is to move someone wherever they are to get them back over the left. And actually, we're going to say that the path of life, being a decent person, is off this chart. Okay, this is all downhill. These are all the negative numbers. Okay, so conscience is the thing to keep someone from moving from left to right. At first, and we talked about this, they are going to have a sluggish conscience, and then they are resisting. Then they become desensitized. And this is the danger zone. And you see how it starts just before they get arrested. So when someone is getting to a point where it doesn't bother them to have their conscience bother them, or here's even worse, it doesn't bother them to have their conscience not bothering them. Does that make sense, the difference? Right? I'm getting to a point where it's not bothering me any longer to have my conscience bothering me, so that's getting less. It's not poking me as much. But then once it stops, I no longer think, well, you know what? It probably was better. I probably was a better person when I used to feel badly, because I don't feel badly anymore. So you don't feel badly about not feeling badly, okay? That's the danger zone. So now it becomes inflexible. So their conscience is getting hardened now. And there you go. So think about what used to be elastic and pliable. How about the hardening of arteries, right? You go from being flexible to inflexible to eventually hardening of the arteries, and then eventually you're going to have a heart attack or a stroke. Okay, and then you reach a point where it's not only hardened, but it's now atrophying. So something very real is going on. The difference between being hardened and atrophied, this is now shrinking, in essence. So now structurally things are happening, and you'll actually see it within structures of the brain. So we'll look at some of that in the pathways. Things are becoming different then. Now, here's a real huge point in the process, because if somebody goes from having an atrophied conscience, it's still a little bit working, but what's happening? Now it's calloused. Have you ever heard of the term callous and indifferent? Now go down, or I will take you down. Here's degree of malice and forethought. We would say they're calculating. So somebody that is calculating, what kind of conscience do they have? They're callous. So we speak in terms of callous and indifferent. I'm going to scroll down for a moment. Okay, look at the kind of pornography that they're looking at by that time. Right? They'll call it fetishes. Or they have a fetish, and it's always more than one, by the way. They'll only let on that there's one. Well, he's into feet. Oh, trust me, he's into other things. Okay, but barely legal, right? But by the time you find out somebody's into this, they've already moved a number of categories down. Okay, still, again, what are we? Callous. Okay, I'm going to go down just for a moment. Look what's happening in terms of degrees of trauma that they're able to perpetrate, and then look at what's happening. It's not just that they're getting off and watching it, but now they're seeking it out. Now there's a drive. This is sort of passive. They're allowing themselves to be entertained by or come across that material, or let others put that material in front of them. They've crossed that Rubicon. Now they are actively seeking it out and engaging in it. Now they have an active interest. That's a huge difference right there. And that may be the point of no return. The point of no return is somewhere in here. And why do I say point of no return? Because they will lose the desire to ever be any other way than what they are. And they actually want to become more of it. They want to double down. They want to perfect the art of that. The book of Romans says that God gave them over. We could say this, and it repeats it three times. He gave them over. He gave them over. He gave them over. And that last time, that person's never coming back. It's actually a judgment, but the person doesn't know and they don't care. We should say they don't care, and therefore they don't even care if they don't know. So there's a point of no return, and that's important for us all to know. but especially for these perps. So you can be super nice to someone, try to love them back onto the straight and narrow, but guess what? If they give evidence of being in some of these areas, as far as you need to be concerned, as far as I need to be concerned, there's no hope for them. Now, for those of us that aren't held captive by them, if we meet them on the street or if they're in our workplace, you'd be professional, but don't associate with them. No good thing is going to come from that. Okay. And then perpetrator's deviant interest, it's changing from, I just tried to show kind of profound degree. So it goes from darker red to black. And once it's in black, I did that on purpose because then they are really open to, it's taking on a demonic form in a way. Okay, I've added this. We're going to cover this just briefly right now. We will go in depth in future podcasts, probably in 2 weeks. As a matter of fact, I'll go into this in a moment. Here's the degree of intensity and premeditation. Let's go down one more so it'll remind you of kind of at the end of the day, how does someone get to a point where they can traumatize a kid? Again, they have to go through all these different categories, which means they've gone through narcissism into sociopathy. Again, what's a sociopath? Different people say different things, but I recommend you listen to people that have worked with sociopaths and psychopaths. Where are you going to find those? Robert Harris says he would go into Wall Street if he hadn't studied them in prison. He actually studied the guys. They were brought to him. He scanned their brains. But you talk to somebody in the criminal justice system. That's where you're going to get good information. Why? Because not only do they have their records, but they're interacting with the guys. That's a qualitative analysis, right? You can do quantitative. I just read a study dealing with psychopathy, what they call a 3-factor analysis. Some are saying that there may be 4. I'm actually going to show you there's 5, and maybe I'll submit that for an article in the Association of Psychopathy or something. So I may be investigating that, but I think there's a 5th category, and it's actually what we're speaking to. It's speaking to those that perpetrate ritualistic abuse, those that do SRA or MKUltra. So they're in a category all their own. So my contention is, you have to have good self-esteem. It's not healthy. It's not normal. It's whacked out, but there ain't nothing wrong with it in terms of they feel just fine about themselves. So we could actually write, maybe I'll do that right in here. We could lay a bar over here saying narcissism. Then we would have sociopathy. Narcissism, it's all about self. You are self-entitled. You polish the art of, or you polish that turd. Okay, you polish the art of that, and then they learn how to win friends and influence people. That's what makes them good salespeople. But as ego grows, it shifts what motivates it and what limits it. So somebody who's a sociopath will stop once the cost outweighs the benefit. The psychopath, meaning when they encounter a boundary. So as they're working more and more people, right, meaning they're able to do more and more things, then the things they're doing to people are getting more extreme. And so there's fewer people that they will encounter that will submit. So they're going to encounter somebody willing to put some boundaries up sooner rather than later. But they look for who? Right? They look for the lambs, so to speak, to silence them. So eventually, what will happen is, as ego grows, the appetite, not just for the benefits, but what? The degree of negative impact. That's what motivates them. And when boundaries are put on a sociopath, they'll move on. They're not going to create a big deal. They're going to give pushback because they don't want their good thing to end. A psychopath is going to punish someone for daring to set boundaries. Okay, it's not that they don't want their good thing to end. It's how dare you for constraining them. And again, this should be a chess master here. They are the chess master. Once somebody enters into psychopathy, then they are going to begin to layer what they do. So they're first going to render defenseless and inflict trauma and this is both adult or child. But again, the age, as we saw, just the same thing with pornography. It starts with adult victim or adult women or men, but first it's going to be women. But then you watch the age and stage as far as developmentally, it'll go younger. And why I say developmentally, it'll also have some adults that are developmentally challenged or handicapped, so they can't defend themselves. So you'll find that the perps are going to target those that can't defend themselves, but eventually also they want younger and younger, because that's what deviance does. And eventually, as someone gets worse, they're first going to render defenseless and inflict trauma. That could be psychologically, they're rendering them defenseless, and then physically, right? They're going to actually isolate the person. Then they're going to overwhelm and immobilize. Here's where a lot of the MPD and DID starts. Frank Anderson uses the term overwhelm. It's a really good word. Okay, so by the time you're doing this kind of stuff, you're certainly creating DID. It used to be MPD, but you're creating parts. Could be, but you notice you're still inflicting trauma. Now it's to an overwhelming degree. And now it's overwhelming. You're immobilizing them. That probably now is physically. And now you're going to add horror. And now you're going to incapacitate. You can actually include narcotics. You're going to give them injections. So it's one thing to immobilize. Now you're going to incapacitate by degree. You're certainly going to restrain them. And now what are you going to do? You're going to terrorize them in all sorts of ways. And then for those that are into MKUltra, so here my contention is DID is starting here. So the splitting. But to purposely and strategically cause splits. And this is what we've been looking at in the other chart. Where does the different levels come from? And those parts that we'll use the term programmed. This is where the programming takes place. But again, hopefully by now you know programming is just really being persuasive. Okay. And then there's going to be what? Ensuring compliance. How do you ensure compliance? Think about what's going on in here. You're creating additional parts that have parts, so to speak. And so with those parts, you're going to ensure that there's compliance, that you have control over the parts if you're the perpetrator. Okay, and that's where you're going to begin to play parts against themselves. And then it's what? You're going to secure silence. You're either going to do that by killing the victim, but ideally, in a strange sort of way, well, we'll show which ones will kill versus which ones will keep them alive. If you kill them, they have to make sure the perpetrators, and look, this is in the last category, and it also includes what? Dark spiritual activities. So those that want to say there's no such thing as SRA because no human being would do that, they've never read through police files, have they? They've never worked in prisons. Okay, so yes, very dark things. Again, does anybody get arrested for SRA? No. In Utah now, they've passed a law. I wonder if any other states, right? Ritualistic abuse. So that's now become a thing. I already had mentioned that the term ritualistic abuse was a category of abuse having to do with consistent and repetitive abuse. But now ritualistic abuse is a new legal category, and that has to do with the kind of objects and activities they're forcing the child to engage in or they're using on the child. A lot of occult types of things. Okay, of course, that is going to be included here. Well, who's going to use crosses to penetrate a child? Don't tell me that's not dark. You can use other objects, right? So in here, they're going to use objects. Now they're going to choose their objects to be of a religious nature. Well, why are they doing that? Because they have harmonized with darkness. You know, an object will be enough to traumatize and terrorize and split the mind. So why are you going to use religious symbolism? Because you're actually after this, right? You're terrorizing, you're traumatizing, and then you want to ensure compliance. So you confuse the child, you make them see demons, or you have the perpetrators that are dressing up. Because the child can't discern, it's dark, they're already been given narcotics, or they've been spun around, or strobe lights, or it's dark. A kid cannot discern at times because the kid's being traumatized. So all it takes is a perp putting on a demonic mask or a mask. We've seen what some of those masks look like. So And then a child is raped by a man with a mask on. Well, what's a child think he or she was raped by? Now, you can also have a perp that is into demonic stuff, that becomes demon possessed, and now rapes a child. And the demon is talking through that person, the perp, and talking to that child. But the question is, when the demon says, we're coming inside you and you're going to have Satan's seed inside you, this is important for people to know, especially those that have experienced that. Okay, Jesus said, a spirit. Remember when he rose? Sorry, track with me. I know I'm adding something different just for a second. This will be important. Remember after the resurrection, remember Thomas? Doubting Thomas. Why was he doubting? Because he was an accountant in a way, right? He had that mindset that if I can't see it, I'm not going to believe it, because he saw Jesus die. And then Jesus does what? He appears and he looks at Thomas and he says, Thomas, here's my hand, here's my side, put your hand in it. Thomas, of course, doesn't need to. But what did Jesus say? When he appears, everybody freaks out and he says, give me a piece of fish. Or the first time Jesus. Second time, Thomas had to sit on it and wait until Jesus appeared to him. I'm sorry. So the first time that Jesus appeared to the disciples, they were all freaked out. So Jesus says, it's me. Here, give me a piece of fish. But what did he say? He said, a spirit doesn't have what? This is important, because if you want to be set free, only the truth is going to set you free. A spirit doesn't have flesh and bones. Okay, why is that important? Let me ask you this. To give birth to someone, to impregnate someone, it takes what? A sperm. That's part of flesh and bones. A spirit doesn't have flesh and bones. So a spirit cannot impregnate somebody. That's really important to know. Now, it doesn't mean that the guy that's demon-possessed wasn't raping the child and didn't get the child pregnant, but the question is this: is Rosemary's Baby possible? No. I know, just let that sink in. I'm quoting the Lord. I'm going to go with that. Okay? Just for those of you that just set off a bunch of fireworks, you know what? Just let it percolate and marinate, so to speak, meaning let it do its work. Because the good news is this, then. Regardless of how you feel, the good news is you didn't give birth to a demon. And you didn't become one with a demon. They tricked you. You were raped, and you feel everything, what they were telling you, because it's horrible, but were you impregnated, and did you carry a demon? You did not. Did you become one with a demon? Jesus said flesh, that spirit doesn't have flesh and bones. Okay, so some of you have probably never thought about that. I want you to really think about it so that you can be set free. Because once you know that, okay, you were raped, but that didn't change you, it didn't change your DNA, it didn't change anything. Okay? Now, because I'm going to go with scripture rather than what perps have said. Okay? Now, why do they do what they do? They want to ensure compliance. Why? Ultimately, they don't want to go to prison, and I'm going to show you the kind of people that want to ensure compliance anyways, that they get a high off of it. And then secure silence. This is so that they don't go to prison. And either by murdering the kid or making sure that on the inside, see the splitting of the mind, that everybody stays in line. Okay, so the battle on the inside that an SRA or MKUltra survivor experiences is because of this. Well, actually all of this, but especially in here, it got so bad, it got so overwhelming. We'll go over here. You were rendered defenseless. You were being traumatized. It was overwhelming. You were immobilized. You were horrified. You were incapacitated. And you were terrified so much so that splitting took place. And now they knew what they were doing. And they can see some of the splitting based upon your facial expression. And now they know that you can't, because you're living through it, that you can't discern that it's all within one body. And therefore, they're going to talk to the different parts, these perpetrators are, to ensure compliance on the inside and what? And a lot of survivors, once they start to get some of their memories back, they're going to go through a time where they were sort of keeping it together. Maybe they hit their 40s, and all of a sudden what starts to happen, right? All the symptoms and they start to feel like they're losing their mind because they're losing their memories. Well, guess what's happening? The parts are now sensing the whole structure is coming unraveled, so they're snatching memories away. Okay, so you don't have Alzheimer's. It's just all this stuff has been triggered, okay, so especially here. So they're grabbing memories, they're taking them away. Okay, I'm going to go back up to the top, and then we'll come back to this one, degrees of intensity and premeditation, okay? But I want to go back up to conscience again, just so you can get a sense of, I know we reviewed it before, but it's important to get a sense of how purposeful it is. If someone goes from left to right, it's not inadvertent. I mean, it just doesn't happen. It takes a lot of effort to override your conscience. Now, by the time they get there, look, you're done by the time you're here, and it ain't ever coming back. So you are a psychopath, guaranteed here. Okay, and everything, all the brain science, all the scans show once you're a psychopath, you're a psychopath, and you are reprobate. Okay, your mind is no longer good for its intended purpose. You don't care, but the purpose of our mind was to value what God values. Have a high view of people, a low view of things, meaning love people, use things. Further somebody goes from left to right, they increasingly objectify. So now people over here, low value of people, they don't even care about people. So no value of life, complete value of things. So they're completely into things. They completely objectify, monetary objectification, right? This is how the world works over here. It's sick, it's sad, right? So there's no value of human life, complete value of things. Okay, so once you get to this point, as a matter of fact, it's from here on over. So we could draw a big circle right in here. So once you pass this point, you now don't care about human life whatsoever anymore. And now all you want is to become better and better at working people as a means to an end. That's why they fancy themselves, especially the further they go, they become more skilled at becoming the shot caller, the OG, the chess master. Okay, and so the Antichrist is over here, or will be over here, right? This is the realm of the Antichrist. This is the realm of just Satan. Okay, so when somebody's over here, they've harmonized with darkness. They can do exactly their own father. As a matter of fact, Jesus said what about the religious leaders? Sorry, I'm circling here, right? But you are of your father, the devil. So on this chart, where would they be? Certainly within this realm, but they are over here. That's why they could crucify the most loving person on earth. Okay, so again, the key to understand all of it is what kind of person. It's the kind of person that wanted to no longer have a conscience. When somebody's at a point where they no longer have a conscience, what are they able to do? Anything. How adept are they at lying? How adept are they at impression management and working people? How adept are they at tricking? The further right they go, they're either going to become more erratic or more sophisticated, and they'll either look more freakish, or meaning they'll stand out, or they're going to look much more normal and sophisticated. That's why parts of you are so confused. Okay, because they looked so normal. Where do we find them? We find them running the world, right? We find them in upper echelons. We find them, what's the Antichrist going to look like? He's going to look very normal, right? That's why people are going to, Israel's going to make a deal with him. People are going to follow him. So the finesse, I'll give you two politicians. He'll really have the characteristics as far as finesse of Bill Clinton and Barack Obama. Okay, that's the kind of finesse they will have. Okay, we already looked at what kind of people can perpetrate these kind of crimes, whether they get busted for them or not. And by the time they get busted, They're already doing this kind of stuff. And that's what we mentioned. It's not that people over here aren't perpetrating crimes. It means by the time they're busted, they actually are much worse than what their crimes show. That's where the plea deals come in. So it's sad that somebody can be perpetrating just tons and tons of this, but only get charged for something like that. So they're going to be charged inevitably for less than what they were doing. But as we talked about last time, we ended it, that we showed in one moment of perpetration, as far as SRA or MKUltra, you have all of those, in essence, you have all those crimes in one night. And if you then add up all that time, the years, this can be 15 to, this could be 10 to 20 right here. Then they may plate it down, but just one incident. So if all of this happened in one night, that's somebody's going to spend their life in prison. Okay, that's how, but it just didn't happen in one night, did it? Okay, we're going to go to malice and forethought now in degrees, and we'll go for a little bit longer. Okay, again, thinking about the categories, right? And it really has to do with deviance, right? Down, where's our categories, right? Oh, right there. Okay, so this is the thing to keep your eye on, so to speak. Okay, so somebody is moving from impulsive and egocentric to now, again, this person isn't necessarily going to cross boundaries. They'll be opportunistic. They'll take her to bed if she's willing to, but they're not going to force her onto the bed. But by the time he's getting worse, now he's feeling more emboldened and empowered. And he's gone from this kind of porn, the soft core gateway, into now he's consuming more kind of porn that is scenario driven, so role playing. We have sex chats, and so now it's beginning to charge him right. This is mild mannered stuff. I'm not minimizing any of this. This is bad. Okay, but now he's going to begin to actively work things to where he can cross boundaries where she's not willing to. This is, if she's willing, I'll just do male, female. If she's willing, he will. Okay. But this is when she starts resisting, he still will. And that's why, look at that dotted line, that's the legal illegal. So this is where by the time he's into boundary crossing, there's still some boundary crossing right here where it's not necessarily illegal, where, for instance, on a date, he is putting pressure on her. There's just this expectation right here. And she finally says, oh, you know what? Okay. Versus he date rapes her. Okay. You see it crossed a line right there, a legal line. The next, as a matter of fact, we'll stick with this. Sorry about that. We'll just stick with this. I'll go across and then we'll go back up to degrees of malice and forethought. So after boundary crossing, then it's going to be very much, he's a man with a mission and he's going to apply pressure. You can always go back, reference the kind of porn he is looking at, because after he's finished with his date, quote unquote, where he's coerced somebody, he's going back that night or the next night, and he's consuming on a constant, he has a constant diet of what going on online? What's he accessing on his computer or on his phone all the time? So he's saturating his mind in this, and then he's carrying it out. So after coercion, so this is opportunity. This is, he's putting a little pressure. Now he's really putting the full court press, and he's doing emotional manipulation, right? Not just sad puppy. This is probably sad puppy in here. But how about, right, you owe me. I bought you dinner. And now he's just going to take it. We can tell that we're certainly illegal here. Okay, so all of these categories are going to get a guy busted. But by the time he's busted, how much time will he do? Well, it depends upon what he did. If it, power and control, could he rape? Absolutely. So we have rape of an adult. Now, I didn't necessarily, up here in the green as far as years, this is the only category that doesn't necessarily match, but what's guaranteed is this. If somebody's doing 4 to 8, for whatever it is, some of these, you know they're in this category. Okay, so rare is it that you're going to find somebody that's in this category that is only going to do county time because of the nature of what they're going to do to another person. Okay, domination. When you go from power to control to domination, now you are physically harming as well. I'm not saying there isn't harm, but this now you're going to be beating the person. You're going to be doing stuff. So that's what gets them extra time. And by the time, so when I was working on psych staff and doing sex offender treatment, I have a guy that's in for, let's say, 4 to 8. But I know what, if he didn't take it to a jury trial, very few of them will. Why? Because then if they're found guilty, they're going to do big time. Okay, so if I'm doing a guy and he pled guilty, what he did is he pled those down. They did horse trading. So he was originally looking at 25 to 50. Well, what did you have to do to get 25 to 50? You had to do quite a bit. And what did they find on your person if you're the perpetrator? Okay, but through plea deals, you're now looking at 4 to 8. So the thing, you can almost triple these or quadruple these. That's probably safe to say. At least half, right? He pled down half of the years. So this guy, if he's doing 4 to 8, he was probably looking at 25 years. Okay, so it's an incentive for the guys. Don't ask me if I agree with that. Okay, that's just how the whole system works. Okay, so domination is even more than power and control. That now I'm just absolutely, you're struggling and I ain't, it doesn't matter. I'm just flat out dominating you. So this is just real aggression. This is assault, this kind of stuff, whatever's going to have to, this could include kidnapping because you're not going to let her leave. Right? She wants to leave, but you're dissuading her. This is you're guilting her. You are hiding her car keys, or there's so many things that's minor compared to, actually it's still pretty major. But here you're pushing her down, right? So she is not able to get up. So you can get some kidnapping charges for that. So you're holding her against her will. And then you're going to add the humiliation. And again, look at the kind of porn. Now, all of these guys are into porn. You could probably do 4 categories worse. So you're certainly going to find, and so as I work with guys, I know that guys that are into 4 to 8, you're going to see these kind of themes. You're going to see, this is sort of what they'll admit to. Actually, very few admit initially. The pedophiles never admit. They just will not talk about porn. It's very interesting. Shows you how diabolically resistant they are. But very few guys want to really admit what they were getting into. Okay, but you know you're going to already have. If somebody's into domination, they were very calculating. They were becoming very strategic. It's more profound when you're strategizing. Just qualitatively different. Calculating, you're weighing pros and cons, but you're becoming a master. You're becoming excellent. Here, you're strategizing. You're sort of strategizing, but now you are all strategy. There's a big difference, and an important difference, because go down to deviance. Yep. Okay, so it really is shifting, as a matter of fact, in here, and that's where you tend to see it really picks up speed. So when somebody's doing a small amount of time, you're going to typically see this kind of stuff. You might see statutory sexual assault in here, but relatively or all things being equal, you're going to see, and none of it's minor. So if I ever say it's minor, I'm really not, as far as damage, I'm not referencing that whatsoever, but as far as all the stuff on paper, what you can see. Okay. But then there'll tend to be these little gaps in here. But then you'll see these clusters that tend to almost, you can see somebody shifting in 1 degree. It's like first gear, second gear, third gear, fourth gear, and then overdrive. Okay. So big, and you can even see here, blemish versus tarnish. Blemish, you're still keeping its shape, so to speak. You still value the shape here. Now you want to damage it. And that's where you see barely legal versus deviant abuse. So the danger zone as far as true psychopathy, it's, oh, look, I moved our category, sorry. right? Everything's turning dark now, really, all of it's serious. But this is where I would say this is the psychopathy zone, where somebody is becoming twisted. Okay, we'll still stick with, we'll still stick with the gray here, degrees of deviant arousal. Okay, so humiliation, they want to tarnish the person's sense of self. So this is different than BDSM because even though the person will describe kink, and they're meaning whatever they're going to admit to here, they're into 4 times worse. Okay, so by the time somebody is into domination, you know they're already into kink, but they go from domination to there's difference, right? This is 50 Shades of Grey. This is I'm gonna defecate on the person. I'm gonna humiliate them. What does that have to do with anything to do with sex and sexuality? Absolutely none of this, actually, right? But now you're just pouring stuff on people. You're just making them eat out of dog dish and worse, right? So this is such a dangerous transition here because now you're going after what? If you're a perpetrator, it's not just you're checking it out. Now you're very active. This is what you're seeking out. And if you seek that out enough, now this is the predator from here on out. And so they're after humiliating and then what? Degrading. So this is, and certainly, and it can start in here, but I mentioned defecation, bestiality. And again, there's a transition. So you'll start to see the person certainly, and the kind of pornography, but whatever they're looking at eventually, so they're going to look at it first, and about 1.5 degrees or 2 categories away, then they'll start acting it out. So nobody does anything the first time they see something. So if you see a guy walking around as an AGP, right, autogonophile, a guy with a blue dress, a guy cross-dressing women's underwear, how about Sam Brinton, the former Undersecretary of Energy, right, that worked for the Trevor Project, okay? We saw him here, but what was he probably into? Well, we know he was into child porn because he was defending Rent Boy magazine. Okay, and what do? Right? Rent boys are the term for young male prostitutes. And what happens to young male prostitutes? They are subjugated, they are defiled, and some we never hear from them again. Okay, so defecation, bestiality. That can start here, but you can tell, wait a second, why is somebody getting into bestiality? What does that have to do with sex and sexuality? It has nothing to do. Now it's just vile, and you're harmonizing with darkness by this time. And isn't it interesting in the Old Testament, and God is still the same, anybody that got into bestiality, because they wanted to, what should happen to them? Capital punishment. It's very much defiling. How about if you're a scientist and you want to mix, for gain of function, animal and human parts? What are you? Yep. You can say, well, that's different than sex. No, you're already doing what? You are normalizing, you're crossing barriers. So you have a deep deviant appetite. So Anthony Fauci, right? Where would we put him? What has he done behind the scenes? Don't know. Could he have participated in MKUltra stuff where he raped kids? Don't. But in terms of psychopathy, we know he's where. All I need to know is somebody is now using animals in ways they weren't intended, or aspects of animals, right? It's one thing to enjoy testing animals, but when you start to combine DNA of human and animals, you are in this category. And we're going to go back up, watch your eyes, and you are where? Where's your conscience? You're fossilized. So Anthony Fauci, if he's listening, Anthony, come on my program, or come on to Emma's program, right? You and I can have a talk, and I'll just help you talk, and I'll be pointing to the different categories as you're talking to us, okay? I'm certified in the hair psychopathy checklist. I'll do a little analysis of you, okay? But Anthony Fauci, if you're listening, you are in this category. You have a deviant appetite. You certainly a deviant interest, but now something's driving you. That's why you salivate over what? Doing this kind of experimentation. So anybody that is into gain of function, any scientist, is a true psychopath. We're going to go up, and they look fine in their laboratory coats, but behind the scenes, what are they into? Of course they are. Behind the scenes, you cannot tell me that they don't have a social life. I'm going to use that term loosely. We don't see what they're doing behind closed doors. They're doing all this stuff because anybody that reaches here is then moving because this snowball-like effect of ego, there's inertia. It's taking someone down here. So if we see someone into gain of function research behind the scenes, what are they doing? They're probably over here. They have no problem with that. Plus, where are they getting their subjects? Thank you very much. Okay, so how about Epstein? Think about what Epstein was into. We would say that Epstein was into what? There you go. Subjugation. When you hold somebody hostage, you bring them to an island so they can't get off. They are a slave, so you have subjected them. What are you? You are sadistic. Look at all the stuff. Violent raping. What interests you? And we already know then that they access bestiality. What kind of person are they? Now again, this is just, they're into worse stuff, but at the very least, anybody that's going to take a child or a young person or a teen, the younger they are, the worse they are. So on Epstein Island, those that went to that island more than once, because I can see a situation where, although I'm just kind of going with this, if I saw somebody's name on the Lolita Express, if I saw their name on it just one time, I'm not going to conclude that that person is down here because maybe they didn't do their homework and they land on that island with him and they look around, they start seeing what is going on and they never go back. Okay, so I don't know how many people just went once. Okay, but it's 2 or more. Then you're talking, you are at least, because you know what's going on that island. So you are at least here. We're going to scroll up. That makes you what? So only psychopaths went back onto Epstein Island 2 times or more. It's just fact. Now, what kind of stuff were they into? There you go. They're very malevolent, meaning they want to harm. And then what's the next stage? And in one night, how many different charges could be brought to bear? All of them in one night. Okay, going back to the silver bar here, as it were, degrees of deviant arousal, motivation, and degrees of intentional harm. So you want to subjugate, and here it is. Not only is the person in essence a slave, they can't leave, they can't get off, but what are you going to start to do? You're going to defile them because you're already harmonizing with evil. And then you're going to desecrate them. And that can take the form of what? Because look at what they're looking at. They're already looking at kidnapping and murder, mortuary porn. You're already down to toddlers and infants. You're already a sadist. So now you're going to be into satanic stuff, bloodlust, cannibalism. You look at spirit cooking. And then you're going to, what do you do with the body? So some are going to get into dismemberment and then ritualistic abuse. This is how you create adults that are into all that. And what do they do with their victims? It's all about desecrating. It's all about all of this, right? Because you're going to really combine all of these because it progresses. So everything they do is going to be not so much impulsive by the time you get down here, right? You're either going to have, I'll show you, you're either going to have extreme impulsivity by degree, or you're going to have very methodical stuff. But in order to keep from getting busted, and I'll show you how that works, you are not going to be impulsive. Okay, so these are very controlled individuals, and that's why they rarely get busted. Plus, they have a lot of money and those kind of things. Okay, so let's go back up and then look at the degree of malice and forethought. A lot of planning, a lot of what's driving them is the thrill of harm. Okay, it's not just they want to hurt the person, but they get a high off of seeing them traumatized and in pain. Let's go back to the goal for a moment now. So again, the important thing is look at the white columns or categories. And the way to view this is these are all going to be apparent in the kind of motivation and the kind of actions and the kind of things that they're accessing in each of these categories. So somebody in each category will act and be consistent. So as I'm working with the men that I work with, especially when I was in the prison and doing the specialized sex offender treatment evaluations, I would give the parole board a sense of what category, now I wouldn't call it a category, but I would speak to these issues. To what degree was he impulsive versus to what degree was he purposeful? Okay, it's really a scale of 1 to 10, so to speak. Okay, so what are the goals? So as he is thinking this through, we can see the activity, we see what's going on in his conscience, therefore he's more and more able to perpetrate. What's he after? Why is he doing this? We know the degree of what he's doing. We know what he's looking at, what he's accessing. We can see how much deep hatred, but malevolent. It's just this very subtle getting off on just dark stuff to do to somebody. It's motivating. And how much time did he put in? But what's he going to get out of this? Here it is. So from mild to profound, here are the categories. Okay, he's into it. He's into self-satisfaction. Mick Jagger in his song, I can't get no satisfaction. Okay, you notice that is pre-arrest or pre-illegal. So again, this is very, this is the world, right? But this is what we see all the time. Guys are in it for themselves. Now, what's the goal here? Okay, think about boundary crossing. He wants to manipulate. But he's not going to go too much, right? Because he knows he doesn't want, he potentially is crossing lines, but look over here. He's crossing into the boundary crossing. That's redundant, but you can start crossing boundaries and stay just shy of legal versus illegal. But it's still, he's straddling the line, he's playing on the edge, and then he's crossing over. But you're going to find that he's not forcing anything. So this is where a lot of the sex offending comes in and why guys aren't arrested, because she feels what? She feels like it's somehow her fault. She shouldn't have worn what she wore if she had just not had that drink. This is a lot of college girls, right? How many crimes go on college campuses, but the girl doesn't call the police? Okay, the date rapes, where, she's, right, this is that gray area in her mind. So there's some gray area, not legally, but most victims don't know the law. And the perpetrators, think about frat. Okay, these are the college guys doing this, right, in this arena. But then for instance, a lot of frat guys, the majority of them are right in here. But within the fraternity, there's going to be guys that do what? But it's not every guy. I'm not minimizing it, but this is the reality, right? When you go off to college, here's my concern about girls going off to college, right? Be mindful of who you're dating, because if you go to frat parties, you're dealing with guys that are right in here, okay? But not every guy in a frat party is going to do what? Do this. Because by the time you're using coercion, it's getting pretty clear that she is trying to say no. That she's resisting in some fashion. She's becoming uncomfortable. Here she is willing, but she hasn't said no, so to speak. Okay, I don't want to lose any of the audience here, right? But this is when she flat out starts and continues to say no. And he's really pressuring her. She doesn't know whether to say no. She's not quite, okay? And that's why very few women that were violated understand that what happened to them was illegal. By the time you're in here, she knows that something happened to her. She just is afraid to bring it up because she knew that she shouldn't have gone back to his apartment. And she doesn't want to have somebody say, well, what did you expect? What did you Okay, I don't defend any of that. Okay. So she's confused. Here she is hesitant because she's embarrassed. Meaning, I can't believe I made that decision. But she knows that he was wrong. Here is, she knows she was wrong. She went back to the apartment, but it's clear he wouldn't let her leave. And this is where she's probably, the likelihood that someone's going to call the police here, the victim, is much, much greater than here, and here is much greater than here. And here, nobody can call the police because what? They haven't crossed any legal lines. Not saying it's not unethical or immoral, but the police won't be involved in here. Okay? Police will be involved in here, but rarely does somebody call the police here. And if they do, guess what they get? Unfortunately, probation. Okay, and then you can see we're back to domination and humiliation. Okay, so look at the goal. So we go from it's all about self. If she says yes, he will. That's where the guys say, how far did you get? Okay, he's really now working it. He's putting pressure, crossing boundaries. Now, you see the difference. He's gone from manipulating to think online. He's now creating fake profiles. And when she meets him and she starts to find out, now it's too late. This is a very dangerous individual. All of them are dangerous, but this is where it can become very dangerous, right? Because it's very quickly, because somebody that's into power and control is also going to use coercion. So the tricky thing is, a girl may think she's dealing with a guy here, but he actually also could be down here. I mean, there's some overlap. But the power and control, that's strong arming. So he is not just deceiving, but now he likes to see, right? It really is overlapping, not just what he can get, but he wants to harm. And we're into deviant. Yep. See the deviant arousal. So this is self-entitlement. He's still getting an erection based upon kind of the idea of sexuality. But here, right in here, what's so dangerous is now he likes to see the pain, the discomfort. So the difference between deceiving versus stealing, that's more overt. And then what? We're now blemishing her. He wants to leave his mark. The next is tarnish. So he wants her to always remember him, but not in a good way. Okay, and so you can see then, this is much more active. This is such a dangerous area right in here. So it's not just, he's been vicariously watching it through the porn and stuff, but now he's seeking it out. He's making it happen. And that's why, so he's the predator. This is the predator zone. And from here on out, okay, he can still come back. But once he goes far enough, we'll go up to the right. Once he gets to about this category in here, he ain't ever coming back. And you can see again the different things, degrees of motivation. Okay, but again, what's his goal? He wants to leave a mark. He wants to blemish, tarnish. Different gradation. Now to spoil. If you tarnish something, you can still get it back, but it takes some work. But if something is spoiled, so if a woman feels she is spoiled, right, that's much deeper on the inside. If a kid likes spoiled food, right, it's no longer good. So a victim feels like there's no way they can recover and ever be whole again. They've been spoiled. And then now we get into that real serious, because it's not just spoiling, and this is psychological in a way, right? If you have caused someone to feel that they are spoiled, that's very psychological. Here now you are doing all sorts of stuff to impact them, and these are degrees of impact. So you're now entering the realm of impact, and now it's to harm. So you can impact somebody without leaving actual marks. Okay, and now you're going to damage them, and now what? Destroy them. Okay, I'm going to now introduce, we're going to just briefly, because this may be enough, but here's the kind of newest overlay that I've been developing. There's going to be more to this next time, so we'll pick up where we leave off, because I'm going to be adding more. I'm actually going to create a standalone chart of this, because there's a lot more to add to this. Okay, think about, we understand, hopefully you've all been tracking with me, how somebody becomes deviant, right? Lust, then he becomes deviance. Lust is about, I'm lusting over that person's body. Deviance is, I want to harm them. I'm getting off on seeing them in pain, seeing that they don't like it. Big difference. Okay, all the difference in the world. Okay, that's psychopathy when you move into that. As somebody's getting worse, now think about these categories again. That's why I left these lines here. Over here we have legal, right? Dotted line over to the left is legal. So you have a couple of different kinds, and I'm going to be adding some more. But for right now, I want to differentiate between more or less the impulsive and the low level. Now, I'm not talking about low level in terms of impact, but in terms of coordination, in terms of the degree of sophistication. So what you have here is you have prison that is filled with more of these. Actually, the top level are the ones that are the majority of guys that are going to go to prison. Down on the bottom are the guys that rarely go to prison. It's really important to know. Why? Because think about the majority of research. Where's an academic researcher going to go to research these kind of men? They're going to go into prison, but how much time do they have? Not as much time as I had. I had more time in 1 day or 2 days than they had in all the research they can do. Okay, so the best place to do research is in prison to work on psych staff, by the way. Okay, where you have a set of keys and then you have access to everybody. Okay, so the majority of guys in prison are above this line. But the same dynamic as far as opportunistic, they're drawn, they're hooked, they're pulled, they're compelled. So it's kind of like Niagara River eventually moving towards Niagara Falls, where something is taking over them, taking control. Now, they're still using their IQ points, but they're giving themselves over to something. And so I use this both in the figurative and literal sense. Very different in terms of intensity. And so what you'll tend to have is you're going to have somebody that starts out as opportunistic. So my contention is this: regardless of who you are encountering, once upon a time they were just confronted or afforded an opportunity. Everything from they found pornography, and in this day and age, at least the last 40 years, okay, you're not going to have sex offending without pornography. So it starts with pornography, and then there's an opportunity. Opportunity for what? I'm going to go back up, right? They're lusting. All it takes is for them to meet someone, and now they are impulsive, egocentric, and an opportunity. Sorry, watch your eyes, right? So now an opportunity has presented itself, but a legal opportunity. Okay, but and it's still maybe ethical and moral. No, I'm sorry. It's unethical and immoral. No, I'm sorry. What did I just say? Let me go back up. Sorry, everybody, watch your eyes. There we go. So I should have remembered this. Okay, I'm going to scroll down. Watch your eyes here. Fair warning to everybody. There we go. Yeah, I'm sorry, because in the blue it would be moral and ethical. Once they get downhill, it's late on my end. Okay, they're already doing stuff that's unethical and they're opportunistic. Let's say the teacher who is now going out with a student. It's the attorney who's dating his client. It's the psychologist that's dating his client. It's the doctor who's dating his patient. Okay, it's not illegal, but it's unethical. And let's say they later on go on to get married, but that guy's going to lose his license. Okay. And he never forces anything. And let's say, weird sort of way they fall in love. So it's unethical. It's not immoral. We talked about that before, but where he starts, he has no intention of caring about the person or following through. Now it's immoral. And then eventually it's going to be illegal. Okay. So the opportunity is going to arise. Now the question is this: what is driving that person? The first and very significant issue is it impulsive or is it more purposeful? So we're looking then at degree of planning. So that's why I wrote on top and on bottom. One of the things I look for when I'm doing an evaluation is, to what extent did the perpetrator show that he planned this? Now I have up here degree of intensity and premeditation. So premeditation means planning. Think about meditation, right? You're thinking. So you're thinking ahead of time. That's planning. Degree of intensity, that's what I wrote down here. It's always in play, regardless of whether impulsive or more thought. So something was beginning to build. So there's a degree of intensity that's building. So in my assessments of guys, it's always going to take into account to what extent was there planning going on, and to what extent was the person degree of intensity or pulled and drawn, as it were. That's very important, because that means the more they were, I'll just use some words, right? They had an insatiable appetite. Think about the person's thought process. This means they're thinking about it all the time. They're on the hunt all the time. It's not just if an opportunity affords itself, because down here it's more planned, and there you see the degree of planning. So the degree of planning and intensity will go together, and so these will be in these different categories. Okay, so up on top of this line, we're going to say that it really starts with impulsivity, and therefore the degree of sophistication is not going to be as much. You can have planning, but not as sophisticated as down here. So below the line, you're going to have sophistication. Here's where SRA and certainly MKUltra, you can have some SRA up here, but MKUltra is down here. You do not have MKUltra up here. And that's why you have very few MKUltra people in prison. Why? Because they're not impulsive and they don't give themselves away. And that's why they're in a category unto themselves. Some different research will show 2 categories, 3 categories, even 4 categories. They'll kind of do factor analysis. I will show you category 5, and maybe at some point in time I'll submit it in a research article. So I'll put all this together and then I'll publish. Okay, so the category 5, it doesn't exist out there in literature, so I'm creating our own. So folks, you're with me as I'm saying there's a category 5, and it's going to be in here. Okay, so MKUltra is a category unto itself. That's why, for those of you that were subjected to very calculating and the kind of MKUltra that bring about or that include SRA, it's very sophisticated. So you take MKUltra and you layer with SRA, and it's almost one and the same. You may have some MKUltra that don't get into Satanism or SRA, right? So you can have SRA that may not be MKUltra. You can have MKUltra that may not, I'm just hypothetically, I could conceptualize MKUltra that isn't SRA, but when you blend the two, you have the degree of sophistication of MKUltra that is now layering on top of it what? That's right, very demonic stuff. And let's go down again, because that means they're diabolical, and look what they do. They include dark spiritual activities because that gives them a high, because these folks are very intellectual. They're very left brain, but how do you get somebody off that is pure left brain? Very Mr. Spock of the old Star Trek, that's just like a scientist. Well, you create a mad scientist, right? But you create one that is energized, right? Not just cold and calculating and methodical, but how do you get him energized? You do it because in a way where he's harmonizing. What category is he in? He's going to harmonize with darkness, and that's why you will see an overlap of MKUltra and SRA. But it's very scientific, and therefore also what? And what you're going to see partway through, where am I calling it? Right there, ritualistic. You're going to see ritualistic here, down the bottom. There's going to be a point through which somebody passes where it now becomes ritualistic abuse. And one of the key things is objects will be used. Okay, so once somebody, and they are psychopathic, if we went straight up again, we'd see there's no return. So you can have, so when you speak of ritualistic abuse, it's important then, at least for me, when I work with men, when I work with perpetrators, when I hear the term ritualistic abuse, or if I were to use it for a parole officer, I'm then going to begin to define this for the officer, because if you use the term ritualistic abuse up, like it is up here or here, so this is all the realm of ritualistic abuse. Now, you still haven't described what is, as far as the likelihood of repeating that. Now, there's a high likelihood anyways, because the guy's a psychopath, but the people down here that are doing this stuff, they will. So will these guys are the impulsive ones, but if you add enough constraints, you possibly can keep them from doing it again, including ankle monitors or bracelets for the rest of their lives. Okay, here these guys will override the monitor. They'll hack into the computer system. Okay, so different ballgame, different intellect down here. Okay, just briefly, and then we'll end with this. We'll come back, we'll review, because by next week we'll review this, but there's going to be a lot more to this. I'm going to make a larger chart. It has a lot of stuff on it, but the points, kind of decision points, are where they get off on different highways, pardon the pun, where they get off, right? But how they diverge into different categories, okay, is really the degree of control or impulsivity. If he has more control, he's going to go down this path, and that will lead to the more intellectual kinds of perpetrators. And this is the MKUltra and SRA. You can have SRA all through this, but where the MKUltra and where the SRA and MKUltra blend is down here. Okay. As you move up, if you're impulsive here, I'll just kind of show how these work, these different routes, as it were, and then we'll go into detail next time, into more detail with this particular, the degree of intensity and premeditation. So we're going to take an impulsive guy. It starts impulsive, and then he now, he's doing it, and then he has to have it again. This is becoming more habitual now. This is a one-off, and then he really liked it, and now he's starting to think about the premeditation. He's starting to now take steps to make it happen again, but he's not very controlled. So he's putting himself in a position where he has the opportunity, and so he's impulsive and he's making that happen. He's being drawn by this time. So this is just a one-off. This is now because he's impulsive. He wants it to happen. Now he's right. This is just before driven. So compulsive is a little bit different. I'm saying this is like second gear. Second gear drivenness. Drivenness is like fourth gear. The word compulsive means with power. Something is acting on him now with power. So you can see pulse. So power within. Now it's almost power starting to come upon him. Now it's driving him. Okay, there's going to be a difference in terms of the kind of sex offender, in terms of the kind of perpetrator, between one that is much more individual. So we'll say the lone wolf versus those that are going to start to connect with others. So these are the guys that are online and they're interacting with other guys. So these are finding birds of a feather. But this guy up here is going to be the lone wolf all the time. The lone wolf, that's why it's more, he'll get to a point where he starts to become more erratic and unpredictable. This is a serial rapist murderer that comes up here. Big difference. You know, Ted Bundy wasn't running with a bunch of other guys. Okay. And this guy's going to lie in wait. And now the reason I selected Factor X, if anybody remembers Dennis Rader, BTK, he referenced this force that would come upon him. Now, my contention is this is demonic on either way, but the demon is going to manifest itself much more tangibly or noticeably to the guy. Okay, Dennis Rader talked about that this Factor X, he just called it Factor, so he could tell the demon was coming over him. And then this is where you're going to get the Night Stalkers are going to be up here. Sorry, but the Dennis Raders, the Jeffrey Dahmers, the Ted Bundys. Okay, and what you're going to find among their items are the trophies. Okay, when you listen to BTK killer Dennis Rader, he talks about how something would come over him, and he started. It's all ritualistic, by the way. Okay, so it's not just ritualistic up here, but there's a realm, but the ritual will look a little different. Dennis Rader talked about he would identify, right here. Okay, so this guy up here is going to do random hookups or cruising. This is a guy that kills prostitutes up here. You notice Ted Bundy Dennis Rader, Jeffrey Dahmer, they didn't go after prostitutes. Different. I had a guy in my unit that was up here. I've dealt with all of these different kinds, but really, really profound. Actually, he was up here. Okay. And he's in for life. Okay. So this guy is the lone wolf, and the reason why, and bloodlust, right? So he's cruising around, but this is going to be snatch and grab kind. He pulls up next to her, and she's never coming back. But this is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre kind of guy, the Freddy Krueger kind of guy. Okay, and so you're going to get maniacal. I did this. I'm envisioning this. He's just as crazed as the amount of trauma he's creating in her, but this is calm as he's creating trauma. A little bit different kettle of fish, so to speak, guy. Okay, but it's all demonic. Something's driving him, but these kind of guys won't reference something coming over them, but guess what was motivating them? Okay, so the inmate that I'm thinking of, he never talked about feeling something came over him, but when you're hacking up body parts, right, you know, and now when you're biting chunks of your own flesh out and you're trying to pull with your teeth, when you're in restraint chairs, you're trying to pull veins and arteries out, something's come over you. Okay, Dennis Rader, right. Think about who else am I thinking? Gosh, she's escaping me. Or we can think of some serial rapist murderers that were up here. Ramirez. Okay, wasn't that the guy? You know, he had the pentagram in his side. Oh yeah. So these are the guys that will carve stuff and the different pentagrams and stuff. Night Stalker. Okay, so he was up here, but by the time they're arrested, these guys look like freaks. I mean, there's plenty of stuff on them, pentagrams and other things. Okay, down here, they're not going to be pentagrams. Okay, BTK killer would talk about he would go cruising, but not random. So he's going to go select a victim, and then he's tracking the prey. Different, right? This guy's going to grab. He's going to grab people at random. Because part of the thrill is the thrill of the hunt. So whenever you see serial rapist murderers that have underwear of their victims, up here, this guy's typically not going to have underwear of the victims. The inmate that's in for life that I just referenced, he didn't collect items. He didn't collect trophies. Let me ask you this. When you're I'm going to scroll up for a moment. Think about the AGP guys, the guys that are going into women's locker rooms, cross-dressing, and they take pictures of themselves, and they take pictures of themselves with underwear or in women's rooms. What do we call that? But where are they? Where very well could they be? Okay, I'm going to scroll back up. So my contention is this. If you do a low bar approach to your safeguarding and you have an organization like GenSpect right now who is embracing AGP guys, they haven't got clue one who they're welcoming in because those guys have women's underwear. And the question is, where did they get that? Well, they bought it. How do you know? Well, I don't know, right? Because you can't imagine, because you haven't worked with guys. I've worked with these guys, and I'm telling you this. They're not buying it. Okay, maybe are you willing to take that chance? Because you don't know, and you think they're really going to be honest with you? So trust me, they got that underwear from somewhere, including laundromats, but probably look at Sam Britton, right? He stole the luggage from 3 different airports, wore the clothing, but what did he do with the underwear? He masturbated in it. Why? Because it's not, AGPs do not find themselves attractive. That is a lie. Okay, that's what they have said. They're envisioning what they've been looking at both in real time, online, dark web. So they're very dangerous individuals. Okay. And now we have the guy. Okay. I'm sorry. So we're going to go trophies. So this will be, think about dismemberment. Okay. Now, Bundy didn't dismember all the time, but this is where you can have certain subjugation, sedation, and then, they're going to do something with the body. But think about Jeffrey Dahmer. As a matter of fact, another guy was found. So these are the guys that will have, body parts. in their so they're going to do something with this. The worse they get, of course, they will use the dismemberment as part of that trophy. So from here on out, they're going for trophies. But this is where they'll have, in their freezer, different things, or even on their mantle. Okay. So, but these are the lone wolves. Okay. But then you have those guys that are going to do stuff with other equally sadistic individuals. So when you see guys arrested for doing for murders, but they do murders together, they went down this degree. They are connecting with others, even two or more, right? So they're like jackals and they run in packs. Down here, what I'll end up calling this is wolf packs. This, you think of jackals, right? It's just kind of looser association, but they had something in common. And so now opportunity will rise. They may or may not have really sophisticated degree of premeditation. So down here, it's the precision. Up here, they're propelled. So that's why we're going to end up arresting these kind of guys. These kind of guys down here rarely get arrested. Okay, these are the bright guys. Not that Ted Bundy didn't have a low IQ. He had a high IQ. But again, he wasn't down in this category. And then by the time you get here, this is where you get the sadistic gang rapes, where they will use objects and stuff. And oftentimes it'll be, this is a senseless crime. Correct. So not a lot of sophisticated planning, but there was a group of them. So this is where you get, and then the question is, what are they going to do with their victim? Oftentimes, these guys will let their victims, or sometimes they'll let their victims go. The guy kidnaps, snatches a kid and drives him back and drops him off a mile away. These are the guys that gang rape the college girl and let her go. So this group will not necessarily kill their victims down here, but sometimes they will. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, right? They did it together. Oh, is that guy? No, that was single. But you can have some of those guys, two or more. Okay, so sometimes they will kill randomly, or they'll let the victim go. Now, if the guy has, again, we're talking about one person at some point in time in his life, and then because of fast tracking of porn, he's going to move toward deviance, but porn fast tracks it. And then he's going to go down this. And instead of becoming more impulsive and more driven, drugs and alcohol are up here. These guys will tend to have drug and alcohol issues. These guys won't necessarily, they'll possibly take drugs and alcohol, but they aren't druggies. Okay, here you've got a lot of drug and alcohol. Maybe you'll have drug and alcohol during an event, but these guys are doing drugs and alcohol throughout their lives. Okay, that's why these guys tend not to be CEOs and well-respected. These are in positions of authority. Okay, and then as things move forward, it becomes much more organized, coordinated, orchestrated, methodical, and scientific. And so the goals here, they want to eliminate the victim. So the lone wolf, we're going back up to the crazy guy, the night stalker kind of guy. So he's going to eliminate the victim. Down here, interesting, they're going to profit, and this really continuum. So these guys are going to, in a way, probably keep the victim alive because they're going to profit. This is everything. They're going to rape and show the film pay-per-view. They're doing something, or they start to pimp the person out. This is not just profit, but they're going to benefit in a lot of different ways. And now they're going to keep the kid alive, and they're going to utilize the kid. And I probably have given you all enough. Heads are probably swimming right now because of the information, and there's probably been a lot of triggering. So Emma, I think what we'll do is we'll just kind of bring it in for a landing for tonight.
Terrific. This was fantastic, Jon. This is a really awesome and creative graph too.
So, well, let me see. I forget how to, I'm looking at my screen. Oh, right there. Okay, I see the stop sharing. So we're going to stop sharing now. And we'll turn it over.
Thank you, Jon.
There you go.
I think it's really interesting learning this because, like I said, we're not taught this, and it's so easy to be manipulated, and you see why whenever you understand, the deliberation and, just everything that goes behind, I guess, what a psychopath is, and all those underlying layers. And to me, it's really relieving in a way to have this information because now, like, we don't have to take on extra responsibility
Sure.
and, extra knapsacks. We can keep them where they belong. And then at the same time, this is information we all should know. It's sad that we're not taught this in school, like what some of this looks like, because I think it would prevent a lot of people from getting hurt as, young adults and even in school. But I love this. I think it's really, really fascinating. And then so validating for survivors too, to understand who did this to them,
That's
because
right.
that can be the ultimate shame when you've gone through MKUltra, satanic ritual abuse, these just heinous abuses. That's the whole premise of it, is the fear and the shame. That way there's the silence, and ultimately I think that's what we want to do, is break that. We want silence breakers and people that aren't afraid of the knapsacks put on them. They can take them off and throw them and, be empowered to step into who they are, what they went through, and know that it wasn't their fault, and know that they can be advocates for people and that their story matters. And that the responsibility for what happened to them does not belong, that it belongs on these deviant monsters. It's just, it's disgusting learning what, you mix all the porn stuff along with what somebody's actions are in the outside world, and it makes perfect sense whenever you break it down, but that stuff can be so, I guess, misunderstood too, and you get people that support it. And it's like, gosh, if people only knew, like, there wouldn't be men in women's locker rooms if people understood this. But instead, there's like people advocating for it. There's people taking their children around these people, and we're just like so messed up as a society because we don't have this information, because we're not taught it about what this is. So I really appreciate you sharing. There's a lot of people that watch this channel that have kids. There's a lot of
Mhm.
survivors that have carried a lot of guilt and shame their whole lives. And even people that aren't survivors, if you have a bad breakup with somebody or you're with a narcissist, that can be really damaging emotionally. So getting the opportunity to finally sort of come to peace with these people and understand them, it can help us really focus on what the problem is, which is them, and then on healing ourselves and realizing that, we don't have to carry that knapsack anymore. So just thank you so much. You put a lot of work into these graphs that you do, these visuals. You put a lot of time into what you're going to talk about on these shows. And I just really appreciate you because I know how busy you are, and you still come on here and you share great energy with us, and you share these creations with us that you're making in the very little spare time that you have. And obviously you're donating your time right now to share with us. So just thank you so much, Jon.
More than welcome. And Emma will trust that this is helping people do exactly as you said, get the knapsacks off and realize that it didn't matter what you were going to do or not do. They had you and they were going to do exactly what they were going to do. So the only thing you can do is give yourself permission to realize that they did exactly what they intended to do. So it had nothing to do with you. And so, you know what? See who they are, and you don't owe them anything.
Amen to that. And speaking of free content, you put out a lot for us. On my show, you have your own shows, you have a lot of different websites. I'd love for you to go through and talk about what you do, where people can find you, and about all of your websites and all the different projects that you're always working on daily.
Well, I appreciate that. And I have had a number of people reach out. So I rarely, just because I don't want to confuse or cause people to wonder why I'm doing this. I'm just, as you say, I'm just doing this to help educate people. I don't monetize anything. That's just my approach. I really think people should help you. Emma, you're putting tons of hours in as well. So I would recommend go and support Emma's platforms. For me, the reason I do it is because, I'm in my 60s now. Gosh, it seems strange. Um, but I just want people to have the information. So because of that, all my information is free. But people have been reaching out asking, do I take clients? And I would say yes. If the times that I'm full, I'll let someone know. Every now and then I have a waiting list, but Certainly reach out if you would like to consult. The way you do that, by the way, is on the homepage of SurvivorSupport.net. Not only can you get a hold of me, there you go. So if you scroll down just a little bit, I'll show you. And there's my Friday night live program. So I do Journey to Healing, by the way. And that is, we deal with counseling topics, and we're dealing with the subject of forgiveness, what it is versus what it is not. And you can access that by the podcast tab, but right there in front of us. Okay. So if you are part of an organization and want some training, you can access it there. But if you would like to consult with me, and I actually kind of set aside my license, but I am who I am. I'm licensed in 2 states, but through here, I do what I call kind of coaching or independent consulting. So therefore, I can work with anyone. There's a disclaimer. You have to agree that you don't want to be diagnosed. You don't want a treatment plan. You don't, right? You don't want professional mental health. But again, I bring myself to the table. So that just so you know what that is personal consulting. Kind of semantics, but it's important because under my mental health license, I can only work with people in 2 states. So through here, I can work with anybody anywhere around the world, actually. So that's how you access me there. Up on top of the tabs, you'll see the podcast. Oh, the site, the way to use it, move from left to right. This is made for survivors and those who want to know how to better support them and just kind of go methodically. The abbreviated programs that Emma and I are doing, you can find that under the 3rd tab, Help for the Journey, 4 tabs down. So the impact trauma, if you want those all in one place. But to get the full episodes, you have to go to the Imagination podcast. So I'm really not putting up the question and answers just because out of just appreciation for Emma. I think she deserves the full unedited version. So if people want to access that. Under the podcast tab over to the right, that is the repository of the different programs, my Friday night program. So there are many, many hours. Right now, we're up to about almost 30 hours. I think I have about 14 episodes yet to put up there. So there's going to be on the current series of forgiveness, what it is versus what it is not. If you keep scrolling down, you'll find about boundaries. So each of those are an hour program. Okay, we can go to the next site, which would be, why don't we do churchprotect.org? That's more of my research, as it were. And also when I deal with social media topics or things that come to my mind, that's where you're going to find not so much the best of the best, but some that I find noteworthy, I just cut and paste in a way on there. So if you want to go back and see what I do on social media, I always do it to educate. So that's a good repository if you want to kind of see some of what I'm posting these days. If you want to find out about the truths about predators, including some of these, this little series that we're doing, that's going to be under here as well. But that'll give you some of my background and comments. So professional peer review, as it were. And if you want to find out about my whistleblowing situation, that you go back up under the regular insights tab, the very first tab when called to do hard things. So I was the first psychology staff whistleblower in the US to blow the whistle on inmate abuse of mental health inmates in long-term solitary, and I'm the reason why they don't use long-term solitary on mental health inmates. So sort of the last days of solitary, I'm the reason why. Then there is unmasking the trans movement, and that may sound like or feel like a whiplash. It's like, whoa, where'd this one come from? Because the trans movement is the world's greatest lie, scam, scheme, and plan to get their people to get their hands on vulnerable youth for profit or prey. So predators are using the trans movement to access kids. So we have a lot of episodes there. I then also, so there are a lot of different things, including my Dr. Ann Gillies, my co-host. She has her newsletter there. So you can access that. Just a lot of good resources. And that's a wonderful, the PPP, the Parent Procedure Plan, how to help address issues in schools that are trying to set kids up for being groomed and how to talk to your kids. So a lot of information on that site. A lot of all the podcasts are then put on YouTube by the same title, Unmasking the Trans Movement. So there you go. And I just got part 2 of Pierre. And what's interesting is not many people have connected the dots about the trans movement and physician assisted suicide. So if you want to see what some of these pushers have in mind, you can see what's going on in Canada. So they're going to take these kids and eventually they're going to offer them physician assisted suicide, the perfect way to cut costs and to silence sexual abuse survivors that ended up having parts that the parts had their body parts cut off, and now they've added insult to injury. Then I have my blog, which is SurvivorSupport.us. You can access that either through the website or just itself, SurvivorSupport.us. A lot of information on there, some about the trans movement, but a lot about predators. And then that's it. That's it as far as the websites. Then I guess my social media, I pretty much just do Twitter. I used to do Facebook more. I use Facebook a little bit just to put videos that I'm still going to be watching. So if anybody wants to go on, what's Uhler interested in, you go on my Facebook page and see the smattering of stuff. It's easier for me, like when I exercise, just to go on Facebook now and find the darn video. So I address a lot of different things. You can see the links there if you want to access different links. I may be starting a Truth Social account, but I have to figure out how to do Truth. So I don't know how to do that. So that's what's kept me from doing all these other, I probably have a little accounts on these different things, but I just can't keep up with it. So I probably have a BitChute account. I don't know what else I have. I have a MeWe account. I think it's Unmasking the Trans Movement, but I just don't have the time. In between, again, I have a full-time client load, and then I have 5 sex offender treatment groups throughout the week. So
Come on, Jon. You're acting like you don't have all this spare time with all these hours that you work every week.
yeah, I know. What's up with me? So
What's up with you? Just kidding. You put out so much, and then you're always updating your social media too. And don't forget your own YouTube under Jon K. Uhler LPC. This is really, you post all your videos on here. You put the interviews that you're on, you publish them, and then you're also publishing Unmasking the Trans Movement, and then you're putting stuff from that you can find on your website, such as forgiveness and those different topics on here. And then you also do interviews with people too, which is really fascinating. I love the ones that you do where you interview people about repressed memories.
That one there. That's right. Part 1, part 2, the picture of those guys right there. That's a military combat veteran who lost half of his time in combat, so repressed memories there. And then he came up with, or maybe he literally in a dream recovered a repressed memory that he saw when he was age 11, a very dramatic murder suicide. So we now have, for anybody that wants to stop the naysayers, where they say there's no such thing as repressed memories, we have proof. Okay, so please use this part 1 and part 2, watch it. I mean, literally go and review this. And Bert is a wonderful guy. He was willing to sit down and tell his story. But you have now scientific, measurable and observable proof that there is such a thing as repressed memory. And Bert was good enough to let me capture that on film for him.
Wow.
There we go.
I love that. And so you guys should definitely go subscribe to both of his YouTube channels and his Jon K. Uhler LPC channel. Like I said, it really has kind of the best of everything that he's doing on one spot. And then if you're interested in the Unmasking the Trans Movement, we need to get these followers up, you guys. I see it's growing.
Little by little,
it should have a lot more followers. There's so much good stuff on here. He brings on, the top of experts and therapists and advocates and people that are, whistleblowing like he is about all of this. And it's really enlightening to hear, just how deep this rabbit hole goes in itself. We could do, a series for a whole year on this. It's really, it's eye-opening to see, how society's kind of brushing this off, but how actually important it really is. So you guys should definitely go check all of these out. And if anything, just subscribe. It really helps creators if, the enemy knows that we have eyes on them. It helps boost them in the algorithm. And for you, you can have tools in your toolbox, even if it's not something that you're able to invest in a lot if you're really busy. You have it right at your disposal. If you subscribe and then you go to your YouTube, all these channels will automatically pop up. So when you do have time to listen to something, or when you want to, or when you're driving, you can just pop on one of these videos, and it helps if you're subscribed. You don't have to go look for these channels. So
As a
I
matter of
have
fact, Emma, what I would add, I don't often solicit, but I'll tell you what,
do it.
it probably would be very helpful. Anybody who's listening to this, okay, if you would do me a favor, I'll tell you why. If you would go and subscribe to this channel, because you can imagine the naysayers and the perps, when they hear that Euler is doing Unmasking the Trans Movement, what do you think they say so that people won't listen? There are 73 separate, so multiply that by 2 so you can see how many separate episodes we have. So 73 hours of information. So we have 120, so I don't know, 73 times 2, 146 episodes. Really top-notch professional interviews. But guess what the naysayers are able to do? Well, Euler's only got 439. Nobody needs to listen to this. So if everybody listening to this would just go and subscribe, if nothing else, it will help me help this content gain more traction. And
Yes.
therefore, then ultimately, I think more people, because anybody like any of us, we look, well, only 439 subscribers. I'm not going to waste my time. So this one really is suppressed. This one, yeah, kind of shadow banned. So if you want to do me a favor, so to speak, not because I need it, trust me, I don't, right? But it will help me then be able to just get this to more people, more places, because they'll see the numbers that would be higher. And then we can actually have more and more people be willing to listen.
Exactly. I think one of the best things that we can do always is support creators, and it's free. Take this, subscribe to it, and go share it with somebody. So many of you ask what you can do to help. That's a really simple thing. Go share it with a friend. Hit subscribe and then go share in a text message, and then go about your day and do what you're doing. You don't have to invest all the time that Jon and I are into doing this. I know that that's not applicable for everybody to be able to do. But it doesn't take a lot to support if you're looking for just simple ways that you can help this movement, supporting other creators, helping to boost algorithms through your follows and comments and likes and shares, that all that goes a long way. And it's a huge deal for people who are creating. Because like Jon said, he's not the only one being suppressed. So this material they don't want to get out. The best thing that we can do to help is to help break those algorithms by following. So please go check it out. Go check out Survivor Support. He has so much on there. Just you could get lost for days and days and days and days with all the content on there. And we're really lucky that Jon takes the time to do this. And his Twitter's fantastic. He's constantly updating it every day. So you guys can see what interviews that are coming up, what interviews he did. You guys can see the latest articles about the trans movement, about survivors, about false memories. He's putting out a lot of different stuff to educate us on all these little nuances that he speaks out about, all in one place. You can know what's happening day to day in his life, as well as what's in the news around all of these events, which is good, because not all of us have time to keep up with that either. And let's face it, it's hard to find real news, so whenever you have Jon out there advocating that for us and helping pick out articles that are also being suppressed, it's like we get to help the whole community in that way by coming around advocates and whistleblowers like Jon, and supporting them. It helps everybody. So please go check him out, you guys. Go support him, go lift him up, go subscribe to his stuff, go watch all of the free content that he's created, and support him. And go donate to him on his website too. Jon doesn't ever ask for money. This is a lot of time and energy. It's expensive if you need a new piece of equipment. So if we can help at all, it's really appreciated from creators. So please go give Jon donations too if you have that in your heart that you want to give. Give to Jon instead of a 501c3. It always helps to give directly to people. So I encourage you guys to just go support him on all levels. And Jon, thank you again. You're such an awesome guest. I really appreciate all the time and effort you put into this, into your regular job, into all the energy and time that you put into working with your clients, these groups, podcasting. I mean, I don't know when you find time to sleep. And you're a husband, a father, like you're amazing. So we all appreciate all the work that you do and, how present you are with every part of your life. And how devoted and generous you are with your time and energy. So thank you so much for doing all of this for us.
Well, thank you, and it's appreciated. And likewise, you're busy as well, and you and Gray, you guys are having to work to find time together. So yeah, we're all doing our part.
We're all doing our part.
Yeah.
And so you guys, thank you so much. I know that so many of you are getting a lot out of the series. So again, as Jon said, to go subscribe to his stuff, do the same with mine. Take this episode if it was of value to you. Go comment, like, share it with one friend. I don't ask for a lot either from you guys, and you guys just being here and supporting is more than I could ever ask. But if I could just ask all you a favor, go share this with one friend. Do that with every episode that you watch. It really helps. And it doesn't take any effort to do that. So I really appreciate you guys. I love seeing all the banter and the encouragement in the chats on these episodes and all episodes. But there's a steady group coming to watch Jon every Tuesday night at 6 p.m. on my channel, Central Time. And it's really neat seeing all the ways that these videos are helping you guys. So please keep sharing in the comments, write your questions down there so we can answer them on follow-up episodes that we're doing after this. Feel free to reach out via email. You guys can contact Jon on his website if you guys want to ask him something personally. And of course, like he said, he's taking clients for the moment. So go reach out if you're looking for help and see if he's available. And start working with him, go hire him too. That's another great way you can support him. So I'm really grateful for you guys. We couldn't do this without you. We appreciate you so much. God bless you all, and we will see you next time.